a chartered accountant, a chartered tax professional, and a public affairs analyst. He has worked variously across Nigerian oil and gas fields and has attended several engineering and management courses, seminars, workshops, and in the UK, United States of America, the Netherlands, Singapore, Gabon, Tunisia, South Africa, and many more. He's also an energy/economic affairs analyst and a regular featured guest/analyst for local and international print and electronic media organizations. Welcome to the program, Comrade Bala. That's quite an enriching profile.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, a quick one. So, Comrade Bala, can you comment on the place of Ukraine and Russia war in the world oil and gas industry?
Yeah, thank you. Before making that comment, I said I had a presentation. So I don't know if it is okay for me to share my slides. Will you allow me to share the screen?
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, they said the host has disabled participant screen sharing. So I don't know if you can enable it.
Yes, you should be able to do that now, sir. You've been enabled, sir.
Okay, yes. Okay, this is the presentation. I don't know if you guys can see it now.
Yes, please.
Is it clear now?
Yes, okay, it's very clear.
Thank you very much. In the next few minutes, I will just discuss on the Ukraine-Russian war, then embargoes, oil market, and the continent of Africa and the African economy. If you look at it, this time around, we're talking about the continent of Africa, and probably towards the end, we shall cascade everything to our dear country, Nigeria. But emphasis now is the African continent. I just have about a few slides, and I will run through them within minutes, and that will set the ground for all the questions and answers. Okay. This is my next slide is this. Okay. This is my next slide. If you look at it, I said this is a million answered questions. The reason why I said it's a million answered questions is if we say we're going to dwell on the political side, we may not finish this discussion today because everybody you talk to have their own answers. And that's why we are likely to keep the political side and look at strictly the economic side. And that was why I started with these questions. And the first one is Russia a friend of the global community? I mean, different people will come up with their different answers. Is Russia a friend of Africa? Some will say yes, and some will say no. Is Russia a friend of Nigeria? Depending on who you're talking to, the answers are likely to be different. So when you switch again and you get to Ukraine, you're likely to meet the same thing. Is Ukraine a friend of the global community? Some will say yes, and some will say no. And when you ask, is Ukraine a friend of Africa and or a friend of Nigeria? Depending on who you're talking to, people may give you the bad, the good, and the ugly answers. And that's why we just have to move away from the political aspect and concentrate on the real economic aspect. So once we concentrate on that, we're likely to make progress. The next slide shows just the global geography of Ukraine. Am I audible enough? Audible enough?
Hello, comrade, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Can you continue, sir? I think your internet was not too good. Hello, sir.
Audible enough?
You can go on, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to know if I'm audible enough. Somebody should be able to let me know. Okay.
Okay, now we can hear you now, sir.
Okay. Maybe I need to just go back quickly. We are discussing Russia, Ukraine, and the embargoes, the oil market, and the African economy. Like I said on my first slide, depending on who you're talking to, you're going to get 1,001 answers. And it depends on the kind of questions you ask. You know, and I started by saying, now, when you ask questions like, is Russia a friend of the global community? Is Russia the friend of Africa or Nigeria? Depending on who you're talking to, the answers are likely to be completely different. Then the same thing when you ask, is Ukraine a friend of the global community? Is Ukraine the friend of Africa or the friend of Nigeria? Whoever you talk to are likely to give you their respective answers. So when you look at the geography straight away, you can see Ukraine up towards Europe, and you can see Russia on the eastern flank. Then you can see Africa towards the downside. And that was why I said we have to move away from the political side and strictly look at the economy. And it is based on the economy that we are likely to make progress, how it impacts on Africa and what Africa needs to do. And when, at the end of the day, we're going to cascade it to how it also impacts on even Nigeria. This is, because we're talking about Africa here, I have to approach things from the context of the African Union. And when we talk about the African Union, is that body that encapsulates everything that has to do with African interests, with Nigeria inclusive. So in the African Union, the core values are respect for diversity and teamwork. We must think Africa in everything that we do. There must be transparency, there must be accountability. We must make sure there is integrity and impartiality. Then we just have to make sure if we want to enjoy Africa as Africans, there must be efficiency and professionalism. Then of course, there must be knowledge sharing. And we have to make sure there is so much information to share. You can't be talking about African Continental Free Trade Area understanding if you cannot share knowledge and information. Then when we talk about the context of Africa, definitely there are micro and macro economic desires. But I want to dwell on the macroeconomic desires. Definitely Africa wants to see physical flow or fiscal flow. In this case, we're talking about royalties, taxes, and other levies. We want to see foreign exchange generation. In other words, we should be able to build things, produce things, sell, and generate revenues in foreign exchange. We will also want to see associated economic and tertiary development. As Africans, we will definitely want to see the development of SMEs. And the topic of our discussion has to do with oil. So generally, we're talking about oil and gas, and downstream of the oil and gas industry must work. We will want to see job creation. Then we want to see technology acquisition and skill creation. Then we'll also want to see infrastructural creation. This is as Africans. Of course, there is this Agenda 2063 of Africa. And the basic intention of that agenda is to make sure Africa is transformed into a global powerhouse for the future. And when we talk about that, we're talking about a powerhouse. When you talk about technology, you talk about engineering, you talk about health, you talk about environmental, confrontation, then you talk about sports and so many things. So that agenda encapsulates everything about African interests. And the reason is because we want to have a sustainable development. And that sustainable development needs to show a practical manifestation of Pan-Africanism in all of us. And that means there must be self-determination, freedom, progress, collective prosperity, and everything must be done under Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. Remember, we're talking about how things affect Africa. So, I mean, we're also talking Africa must be prosperous. Africa must be peaceful. I mean, things must be driven by our own citizens because we are looking at a dynamic force. And we're talking about this Agenda 2063 was something that was discussed, and it was set between 2013 and 2063. For those who are going to be among the living in 2063, is this achievable? Time will tell. We also want to make sure there is deliverability on the aspirations of Africans. And these are some of the deliverabilities. We want an integrated continent as Africans. We want good governance. We want democracy. We want a peaceful and a secure Africa. We want an Africa that will have a strong cultural identity with shared values and ethics. We want an Africa whose development will be driven by Africans. But that does not mean we will shy away from sharing or cross-fertilizing knowledge. We will also want an Africa that will be strong, an Africa that will be united, resilient, and it will have an influence on the global market. So when we talk about the African mining vision, because we're talking about oil and gas industry this time. So when you talk about African mining vision, I mean Africa's mining vision, we're talking about going in to bring out our natural endowment. And when you talk about natural endowment here, you are talking about things like solid mineral, then you are talking about oil.
Sorry,
and gas.
Mr. Bala, you have 5 minutes.
I have 5 minutes?
Yes,
okay.
Please, to finish up the presentation.
Okay. Okay, all I want to say is so many things are being discussed about Africa. And when you look at it, Africa, as we speak today, is bigger than all of Europe, China, and United States of America put together. Africa is bigger than all of them. So what do we stand to gain? Is it possible that we have 60% of the arable land? Is it possible that is it true that Africa has 90% of the raw materials reserved globally? Is it true that Africa has 40% of the global gold reserve and 33% of the diamond reserve? We have also been made to understand that Africa is rich in oil and gas. But the most important thing is this. We also have been made to understand that Africa alone has that arable land that can feed the entire world. So the question is this: if we can feed the entire world and we have what it takes to crystallize our dreams into realities, the question is, why are we bothered about Ukraine and Russian war? What are the effects? We notice that there is this panic on chemical, pharmaceutical, and so many things. Even when you talk about the oil and gas industry, that will be the topic of our discussion. There is so much panic. Why should Africa and Africans panic? Could it be that we are doing something that is not right? And this is the summary of my presentation. We notice that the only reason why Africa and Africans are panicking is because there is leadership docility.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Bala. And I'll still take you back to my question earlier. So what's the place of Ukraine and Russia in the world oil and gas industry?
Well, the place of Russia and Ukraine is fundamental, because when you talk about non-OPEC members are being led by Russia. And that means Russia has substantial quantity of oil and gas. And Russia is also a global power. So if you have a global power and a small enclave like Ukraine having crisis, knowing that we get so much from both of them, Africa is supposed to feel threatened. But Africa is feeling threatened because of problems and issues that were created by Africans. Because from my presentation is very clear, we have everything. So it's the docility. It's also the misplaced Pan-African vision. It is also tied to our historical background. We also have lack of trust and confidence amongst us as Africa. So this will be the summary of all the questions I will answer from you. Go to the next question.
Oh, can you hear me? What issues and problems accounted for worsening Ukraine-Russia relations before the war?
Well, the basic thing, that was why I said we were not going to be bothered about the political angle. We are going to be more interested in the economic angle, how it affects Africa. But when you look at it, I mean, it's basically a very simple thing. Ukraine wants to dance to the tune of NATO, not Atlantic Treaty Organization. And Russia is saying, I'm not going to tolerate that. If you want to go near NATO, I won't tolerate it, just like the way the United States will not allow anybody to go close to Cuba. So that's the thing. Just like also the way China will not allow anybody to go close to Taiwan. If China will not allow anybody to go close to Taiwan, and the United States will not allow anybody to go close to Cuba, it's in like manners that Russia doesn't want anybody to go close to Ukraine. That's the practical and political answer.
Can you paint a vivid picture of the ongoing war in Ukraine?
Well, it's very clear based on what is happening. Ukraine is, I mean, Russia is going through series of sanctions because of the invasion of Ukraine. But when we know, I mean, what is happening in Ukraine is there have been all kinds of devastation. We have seen human devastation. We have seen economic devastation. And for some of us, as Africans or Nigerians, a lot of Nigerians and Africans are schooling in Ukraine. All of them have been sent back home. So the situation is terrible. It's not good for the global humanity. But questions will still be asked. Who fires the first shot? That's the answer, which is likely to be political. But we are going to dwell on the economic implications of so many things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Bala. So my next question is, how has it affected the economy and other developments in Ukraine and Russia?
Well, Africa is affected because of the docility. The reason why Africa is affected is because of these simple reasons I have given. We have leaders that are docile. We have leaders that are not pan-African in their thinking and vision. Some African countries are still tied to their colonial masters. I mean, we lack internal trust. And that's why we cannot crystallize all our God-given wealth and our all God-given riches. Those are the reasons, because like we said, if we go through all this, if Africa has all these endowments as we claim, and Africa is supposed to even have what it means, like arable land, to feed the entire world, for Africa to be panicking, that means something is wrong with Africa.
Okay, thank you. We know that Russia is one of the 3 largest oil producers, along with US and Saudi Arabia. So my next question is, in what ways has it also impacted the global oil and gas industry, and especially oil markets?
Well, thank you for that very question. It has impacted very well because, like you said, Russia has huge deposit of oil and gas. And remember, you know, when you talk about crude oil and gas, or oil in particular, crude oil, we have OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, led by Saudi Arabia. Then we have non-OPEC members led by Russia. For Russia to be the leader, that means Russia has huge deposit of crude oil. You know, so to that extent, if Russia is under sanctions now, then supplies will be affected or disrupted. For example, Russia supplies probably more than 40% of the natural gas requirement in Europe. So if Russia cuts that, now the whole of Europe is likely to be asphyxiated. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, thank you very much. So that leads me to our next question, Comrade Bala. How will the global oil markets likely respond to the conflict in the coming months?
While the global oil market has responded already, we have seen prices of crude oil going up. We have seen all kinds of energy requirements and demand. When you go to countries that are not having crude oil, unfortunately, you see prices of what we call distillates or refined petroleum products going up. But we shouldn't tie it to the case of Nigeria. The case of Nigeria, why we are not having enough petrol, enough diesel, enough aviation fuel, enough kerosene, is because internally we decided not to domesticate. Because if we have been domesticating, and we have functional refineries, we're not supposed to be talking about aviation fuel now. But because there is planlessness in Nigeria, of course, we know what's happening. Lack of diesel and the cost of diesel has just made every business in the strategic sectors now to be suffering. And I can tell you, company income tax will go down this year. Personal income tax will go down because many people are likely to be fired. And you've seen what is going on in the aviation industry. They are firing staff. We are seeing flight cancellations and flight delays. So we decided we are going to deregulate the downstream sector of the Nigerian oil and gas and predicate it on imports, which is very unfortunate, knowing that we have a very weak currency and we have a very weak economy.
Okay, thank you. We read in the news that, and we also are aware that few months ago, oil price hits an all-time high since 2008. In your opinion, do you see or think that the oil price will likely rise over $150 per barrel?
I think the oil price is approaching what I can call a plateau now. Because even some of the economies that decided they want to punish Russia, they've just noticed that it will be detrimental to their economies. And besides that, some economies have started patronizing Russia. So to that extent, I don't see the price going above where it is hovering now. The maximum I can see the price going to, I may be wrong, maybe probably a maximum of $120 or $125 or $130 per barrel. Because economies must survive. Some of the economies that are trying to hurt Russia have just discovered that they are indirectly going to hurt themselves, especially when it comes to the area of gas in Europe. So there is a kind of understanding or behind the scene or behind the screen understanding.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm pleased to inform everyone that we are live on our YouTube channel, so you can quickly go to our YouTube channel, The Daily NG, and be a part of this program. So for comments and questions, you can please use the chat section. So, okay, Comrade Bala, over to you. Do you think Nigeria has the capacity to meet its OPEC quota and increase supply to take advantage of the situation?
Having capacity is one thing. Having political will is another thing. Nigeria has what it takes to be able to meet up, but where is the political will? And that's where the question comes from. If you remember, there was a time Nigeria even conceived the idea of the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. And the plan then was to make sure gas is piped from Nigeria through North Africa, through the Mediterranean Sea into Europe. If that had been done, Europe would naturally turn towards Africa and towards Nigeria. So the reason why Nigeria is not doing well now, we're talking locally, is because of what we call business climate hostilities. And when I say business climate hostilities, I want to talk about operating conditions that are not good. There is insecurity, there is issues with contract cycles, there are issues with vandalism. We have all kinds of issues, which I can best describe as business climate hostilities. Even the opaque nature of our joint venture relationship with international oil companies that we call IOCs are also factors. So Nigeria is generally suffering from business climate hostilities. Unless we do away with those business climate hostilities, we will not be able to meet up with our OPEC quota. We will also not be able to meet up with even our local budget volume production quotas.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Bala. For those who have just joined us, we are discussing the topic Ukraine-Russia war, embargoes, oil markets, and African economy. So, okay, Mr. Bala, the next question, what is your take on the rising pipeline vandalism, oil theft, and illegal refining in Nigeria?
Okay, first of all, let me start with illegal refining. It's very unfortunate that there is something called illegal refining in Nigeria. As far as I'm concerned, what we have that we call illegal refining is basic criminality and theft. Because those who are tampering with these pipelines, first of all, they are thieves, they are vandals. Whether you have crude oil or gas or water in those pipelines, those products belong to somebody. And what we think are illegal refineries, first of all, they are not refineries. They are, carcinogenic plants, they are pollution plants, and they are poisonous plants. Because for you to establish a refinery, whether it's a modular or a major refinery, you need to pass through 3 stages. Must apply for license to establish, then license to construct, and license to operate. So without having these 3 licenses, in the first place, you have not started. But what we are even having pipelines and still products that belong to other people or investors, whether they are local or international investors. Then after stealing those products, the next thing again, they just boil this product, throw the remaining ones to the environment to biodegrade the environment. The ones that get into the ground destroy freshwater aquifers. The ones that get to the stream destroy the streams and cause pollution to aquatic plants. Then the ones that get to the atmosphere come back as carbonic or acid rains. And when they come down like that, they destroy humans. So what we think are illegal refineries are basically pollution plants. They are carcinogenic plants. Then when you're talking about generally how we can do, vandalism is a bad attitude. Crude oil theft demeans a nation. Stealing is a bad thing, it's a bad attitude. It is not good for the country. It is not good for the image of the individuals. It's not even good on the side or on the face of investors. And it is even not good internationally. Because as we speak today, the person presiding over or superintending over Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries called OPEC is a Nigerian by name Alhaji Sanusi Barkindo. I don't think His Excellency Barkindo is happy with what is going on in Nigeria.
Okay, that's an elaborate explanation, Comrade Bala. Okay, my last question is, what is your advice to the federal government, oil companies, and host communities?
Well, first of all, let me start with the host communities. The host communities are supposed to know that they are the host. So allowing vandals to be tampering with crude oil and gas facilities is not a good thing. But what we will employ the host communities to do is they should see those assets and investments as theirs. But if something is going wrong and they are not happy with the way they are being treated, please let them take the necessary channels. You know, we are in a political dispensation. They can go through their representatives politically at the state level and the federal level, even local government level. But if the attention cannot be listened to, let them resort to the media so that the concerns will be addressed. Then for investors, I sympathize with all investors, whether they are local or international investors, because what's going on is really affecting them. The environment is very harsh. The business environment is harsh. So what I will tell investors is this: continue to comply with your civic responsibilities of paying taxes and levies. But at any point, if you feel your investment is being tampered with, please approach the necessary authorities, because you have internal mechanisms in your companies. Then for the government, it is very clear that certain things are not going right. I mean, for our refineries not to be working, there is a question on our political and economic leaders. But one thing we want to say is this: please make the environment conducive. Make the environment conducive for investors, whether they are local or international investors. Make the environment also and the operating situation conditions good for the host communities. At the end of the day, it is Nigeria that will benefit. But most importantly, please, we want political leaders that will also be very good economic managers. Because as we speak today, the image of Nigeria, especially the oil and gas industry image of Nigeria on the international pedestal, is looking bleak, is looking damaged and terrible.
Okay, thank you very much. While we're having this discourse, an oil and gas expert, Dr. Wisdom Enang, just joined us. I would like to hear his perspective. Dr. Wisdom Enang, I know you're there. Over to you.
Hi everyone, and good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, Doc.
Yes, loud and clear.
Can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree with all comrade has said. I think the only other thing I would add is that we need to move away from the volume-based mentality where everyone is scrambling for the volumes, whether by theft or the country is trying to think. We need to look at the value-based systems because there's a lot of benefits on the value chain when you start developing the value derivatives from the oil. If you're just doing rent seeking, then of course that the value is very constrained at that point. So when we start looking at it, kind of developing the value chain, whether it's domestic utilization or maybe building our industries based on the products we derive from petroleum, then we're ready. I don't know why we keep playing the catch-up game, because I can't even call it the second advantage game. There is no advantage whatsoever. We play a catch-up game, and even when playing the game within the Nigerian industrial space, we don't clearly understand we don't put our regulations and implementations vis-a-vis what is happening globally to make sure it is globally competitive. And so I struggle. So you have cost of production is quite high, the hostility is high. What's the real incentive? So I think we need to be value driven. That's the first thing I need to say. And we need to have a very strategic roadmap about how we're going to do things. I find that there's a lot of wonderful things in writing, and most of it, fantastically, it's being copied from maybe other, other climes where they've written, but the implementation discipline is really, really poor. We need to, yes, we copy, and it looks fantastic. If they read it out, it looks like something that is out of a combination of Harvard, Cambridge, and Oxford. But the implementation is where we actually see that actually either it wasn't an original idea from us, or it actually hasn't been honed in to be reflective of the realities in the country when at the implementation point. So I would say the government needs to be very disciplined about it. And we always need to know that, at this point in time, we almost certainly need to lead the path forward. You can't go with empty hands asking for funding when your investors are looking at your efficiency of capital utilization within the sector, and it's not showing up. I mean, I look at what you've done. We quote values, right, that have been spent on the refinery. And
okay, thank you very much,
okay.
Dr. Wisdom. And now, okay.
Can I come in quickly?
Okay, quickly,
yes,
just 1 minute.
Yes, I appreciated Doctor. That was why when he was talking about value, I brought up this slide. I don't know if you saw it, and I don't know if people are still seeing this slide. If you look at what this slide is saying, Nigeria is just at this point, highest this point. And Doctor is talking about crystallization of everything here, which is very, very unfortunate. So Nigeria is actually around here. But this is where Nigeria is supposed to be, which is very unfortunate. And like he was saying also, he was trying to talk about our leaders. Okay, look at the situation where in the Petroleum Industry Act, you predicated everything on, first of all, you are going to deregulate the downstream and you are going to predicate it on imports. How can it work when you have the raw materials here? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that is a poisonous clause. You cannot have.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Bala, for sharing your thoughts and perspective. And we look forward to having you in a more robust engagement.
Thank you.
All right, I remain your host. God's Will Odion. Mr. Mike, do you have any other comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. Please, this is to wholeheartedly appreciate Comrade Zaka. To be honest, if you had more time, you had so much to dole out, and you've made very valid and tangible points. Very robust. Thank you very much. Thank you for your responses. We also want to appreciate Dr. Wisdom Enna. Thank you for your contributions too. We will make these materials available to relevant authorities. We hope they are listening too. We'll try all we can to ensure that this discourse does not end here. We will spread it out, and hopefully we pray that the relevant people in the authorities would listen to this uncommon wisdom we have shared and will take necessary action. We unfortunately have to round up now. Our time is gone. We want to thank everyone for coming. We appreciate you. Also, we can recognize Abiola, Ibile Oil and Gas. We really appreciate you. Thank you. And every dignitary that is here. Thank you for joining us. We hope to have a more robust engagement in the nearest future. Once again, Comrade Zaka, thank you. Dr. Wisdom, thank you. We appreciate it.